This video is the first of a three-part series that's an introduction to traditional Judaism as a religion. Traditional Judaism based upon the Hebrew Bible and the Talmud. Each of the three parts of this introduction to Judaism will deal with a specific subject. The first part will deal with the nature of traditional Judaism as a religion. The second part will deal with the question of what is the essence of Judaism as a religion, faith or good deeds. And the third part will deal with the importance of study in the Jewish tradition. Now, I want to say a couple of things by way of general background regarding this introduction to Judaism, regarding all three parts. Number one, at the beginning of each of the three parts, I will begin by telling a rabbi-priest joke. And the reason for that is I thought because these are the first video classes that I'm offering on my internet site, OrthopraxJudaism, at least at the beginning of each of these three parts of an introduction to Judaism, by telling a joke, it'll make things a little more fun. But after I tell the joke, in light of telling the joke, I'll then teach about Judaism in a very serious way. That's number one. Number two, the first two parts, I will be drawing comparison between Judaism and Christianity. That's not so in the third part. But in the first two parts, I'll draw a comparison between Judaism and Christianity. And oftentimes, as a teacher of Jewish studies, I draw a comparison between Judaism and Christianity, some other religious tradition, some other ideology. My purpose in doing so is not to say that Judaism is superior to Christianity, some other religious tradition, some other ideology. My purpose in doing so is simply to make clear that Judaism as a religion has its own very unique orientation. Okay, that's the second point. So that's in terms of general background regarding all three parts of this introduction to Judaism. So we're ready then to begin the first part, which deals with the nature of traditional Judaism as a religion. So the first rabbi-priest joke. Rabbi and a priest are really good friends. Each week they get together at one or the other's home, and they play chess. And over the chess game, they talk, and one week they're playing at the priest's home, and they get into a huge argument over the chess game. And they both become really upset and angry. The rabbi gets up, he storms out of the house, slams the door shut, and they don't talk to each other for several weeks. Finally, after several weeks, the rabbi is feeling really bad about what happened, and he says to himself, this is really silly. To ruin a really good friendship over a dumb chess game, he decides he'll go apologize to the priest. So he goes on Sunday morning to the priest's church, and he walks in the middle of the service, and he takes a seat in the very back row. And after the service, he'll go apologize to the priest. Well, the priest sees him walk in and take a seat in the back, and the priest is still really angry. He doesn't want to have anything to do with the rabbi. So the priest says to everyone in the church, "Excuse me, will all non-Christians please leave?" So a couple of people get up and they walk out. The rabbi doesn't move, he continues to sit. So the priest says, "Excuse me, will all non-Catholics please leave?" So a few people get up and they walk out. The rabbi doesn't move, he continues to sit. So now the priest is starting to get a little angry. He says, "Excuse me, will all non-members of this church, parish, please leave?" So a few more people, they get up, they walk out. The rabbi continues to sit, he doesn't move. Now the priest is pissed. He says, "Excuse me, will all Jews please leave?" So now the rabbi gets up. He walks over to the statue of Mary and says, "Come on, let's get the kid and go." So that's the first rabbi-priest joke. Well, Judaism and Christianity have a very special relationship. Christianity grew out of Judaism. Jesus was a Jew. His earliest disciples and followers were Jews. Jesus did not abandon Judaism. He didn't break away from Judaism. Most importantly, Jesus did not found a new religion, Christianity, with its own teachings apart from Judaism. The founding of Christianity as a new religion with its own teachings apart from Judaism, that came after the life of Jesus. And probably the central figure in that regard was Paul, who himself was a Jew, originally named Saul. And it's really with Paul that we can see the emergence of Christianity as a new religion with its own teachings apart from Judaism. So I want to emphasize then that even though Christianity grew out of Judaism, nevertheless, there are very, very fundamental differences between Judaism and Christianity as religions in terms of orientation. And what I want to do then, in this first part of an introduction to Judaism, dealing with the nature of Judaism, is I want to make clear what in my mind is the most fundamental difference between Judaism and Christianity as religions. Okay? So I'll talk briefly about the nature of Christianity as a religion, and after that I'll then elaborate and talk much more in depth about the nature of Judaism as a religion by way of contrast to Christianity. Okay, and this will be 2 videos then. This first part of an introduction to Judaism, dealing with the nature of Judaism, will be 2 videos, this video, and then there will be a continuation. Okay, so Christianity. Christianity is a religion in a very different sense than Judaism. Christianity is a religion in the sense of a faith commitment. Faith not just in God, but in Jesus as the Messiah or Savior. So that what defines one as a Christian, what unites Christians as Christians, is this fundamental faith commitment in Jesus as the Messiah. And what that means then is that in principle, there can be no such thing as a secular Christian, a secular non-believing Christian, because Christianity is a religion in the sense of a faith commitment, belief in Jesus as the Messiah. So, let's suppose you have a person who is born of Christian parents, and this person believes in God, but this person doesn't have that fundamental faith commitment in Jesus as the Messiah. This is not a true Christian. Because Christianity is a community of believers, and the central belief defining one as a Christian, uniting Christians as a Christian, is belief in Jesus as the Messiah. So therefore, there can be no such thing as a secular, non-believing Christian who doesn't believe in Jesus as the Messiah. One other point that's very, very important here. The term Orthodox is a Latin term that's an influence of Christianity, and the term is very compatible with the Christian conception of religion. The term Orthodox literally means correct doctrine, correct belief. And such a term then is very compatible with Christianity as a religion, because Christianity is a religion in the sense of a faith commitment of belief in Jesus as the Messiah. So the term Orthodox, correct belief, is compatible with Christianity as a religion that's a religion in the sense of a faith commitment. For some inexplicable reason, why, I don't know, I don't understand, but for some reason, this term, Orthodox, a Latin term, an influence of Christianity, a term that's compatible with the Christian conception of religion, has entered into Judaism and even exerted an enormous impact upon Judaism, especially in the sense that widespread is a misconception, in my eyes a misconception, widespread misconception that traditional Judaism has always been Orthodox. This is, in my opinion, a complete misconception. If we return to our roots in the Hebrew Bible, in the Talmudic literature, on the basis of the Hebrew Bible and the Talmudic literature, the nature of traditional Judaism, if for some reason we insist, again, I don't understand why this is so, but if for some reason we insist upon using Latin terms, the nature of traditional Judaism based on the Hebrew Bible and the Talmudic literature is orthoprax, not orthodox. Orthoprax, correct practice, correct deeds. Judaism is a religion not in the sense of a faith commitment, orthodox, correct belief. It's not a religion in the sense of a faith commitment. It's a religion in the sense of a way of life, orthoprax, a way of living, doing, correct deeds. It's a way of life of a people. And a people in a nationalistic sense, not a racial sense and not an ethnic sense. From the very beginning of Jewish history, there have been Jews of very differing backgrounds, racially and ethnically, in terms of racial background and ethnic background. But besides that, anyone can convert and become a member of the Jewish people no matter racial or ethnic background. So that Judaism is a religion in an orthoprax sense, good orthoprax sense, correct deeds, correct practice, an orthoprax sense of a way of life, a culture, a way of life as a culture of a people, a nation. Okay? Now a culture, a way of life, a culture actually has two elements. A culture is a way of looking at life, a way of understanding life, and flowing from that way of looking at life, understanding life, is the way of life itself, the way of living, the way of doing. Okay, but in essence, a culture is a way of living, doing. And therefore, the term orthoprax, correct practice, correct deeds, is compatible with a traditional Jewish conception of religion in the sense that Judaism is a religion in the sense of a way of life of a people. Okay? So, what defines one as a Jew is not a faith commitment. And it's not a traditional Jewish life of law and ritual practice. What defines one as a Jew is simply a legal standard of being born of a Jewish mother or having converted. What unites Jews as Jews is not a faith commitment, and it's not a traditional Jewish life of law and ritual practice. What unites Jews as Jews is belonging to a people with a shared culture heritage. And there are a number of different elements of Jewish culture, of our heritage, that are in common to the Jewish people, the Jewish nation. Number one, we have a common language, Hebrew, in common to the Jewish people, Jewish nation. Not all Jews may know Hebrew, but the language Hebrew is in common to the Jewish people, Jewish nation. Number two, we have a national homeland, the land of Israel. Not all Jews may live in the land of Israel, but the land of Israel is our national homeland of the Jewish people, the Jewish nation. Number three, we have a legal system that's a part of our heritage. Nations have legal systems. So Judaism as a nation, that we're a people, a nation, we have a legal system that's a part of our culture. Again, there may be Jews who are observant of the legal system, Jews who are not observant of the legal system, but we have a legal system that's a part of our culture and heritage. Number four, we have a shared history, a national history of the Jewish people. There may be Jews who are ignorant of their history, but we have a national history that's in common to the Jewish nation. And then lastly, we have a common culture. In a broad sense, culture. This is something that's beyond a traditional Jewish life of law and ritual practice. So for example, dietary laws. Dietary laws are a part of traditional Jewish law and traditional Jewish ritual practice. By contrast, Israeli folk dancing is not a part of traditional Jewish law and traditional Jewish ritual practice. But Israeli folk dancing is a part of a larger Jewish culture of the Jewish people. So again, what unites Jews as Jews, what unites Jews as Jews is being a part of a people with a shared culture, a heritage. Okay? So what that means then is that in principle there can be such a thing as a secular Jew. Okay? We can have a secular Jew who doesn't believe in God at all, a non-believing secular Jew, a non-practicing secular Jew who is not observant of a traditional Jewish life of law and ritual practice. And yet, this secular Jew, who doesn't believe in God, who doesn't live a traditional Jewish lifestyle of law and ritual practice, this secular Jew is a loyal member of the Jewish people. This person has been born into the Jewish people, born of a Jewish mother, or has converted, and this person is loyal to his or her people and his or her heritage culture. So there can be such a thing as a secular Jew in principle. Okay, so now what I want to do is to go back to these two concepts of orthoprax and orthodox. And I'll finish with this point and then continue in a second video. Okay? So I'll finish up this video with this point. I want to go back to the distinction between orthoprax and orthodox. Orthodox, again, literally means correct doctrine, correct belief. And implied in the term then is that religion demands certain beliefs or principles that must be accepted. And again, this is compatible with a Christian conception of religion. Why? Because Christianity is a religion in the sense of a faith commitment, belief in Jesus as the Messiah. So this is what's implied in the term orthodox, that religion demands certain beliefs or principles that you must accept. Okay? If we go back to the roots of our tradition again, of the Jewish tradition, traditional Judaism. We go back to our roots in the Hebrew Bible and in the Talmudic literature. The nature of traditional Judaism is again orthoprax, correct deeds, correct practice, not correct belief. And indeed, there is no dogma, binding dogma. Dogma means a set of beliefs that must be accepted. There is no binding dogma from a legal point of view, not in the Bible and not in the Talmudic literature. None whatsoever. The Bible doesn't formulate and codify any set of beliefs or principles from a theological point of view that we must accept. The Talmudic literature, there's no binding dogma, set of principles that we must accept. Okay? So, the first to codify a binding dogma in the Jewish tradition from a legal point of view, to codify a binding dogma from a legal point of view, the first to do so in our tradition is Maimonides in the 12th century. Maimonides is a great legal scholar, philosopher of the Jewish tradition. And Maimonides in the 12th century, for the first time and the only time in Jewish history, codifies a binding dogma, binding upon the Jewish people from a legal point of view. He codifies what are called his 13 principles of faith, a comprehensive set of principles, theological principles that must be accepted, and he codifies them as a binding dogma. This is also the first time in Jewish history that we find the creation of an orthodox conception of Judaism. Okay, that Judaism demands certain beliefs that must be accepted. Maimonides is the first then to create such an orthodox conception, the first to create a binding, and the first and only figure to create a binding dogma from a legal point of view, set of beliefs that must be accepted. Now, just to complicate matters, in my opinion, Maimonides is very, very aware that such a codification of a dogma and a creation of an orthodox conception of Judaism is a complete distortion of our orthoprax heritage based on the Hebrew Bible and the Talmudic literature. Maimonides is very aware that this orthodox conception that he created in the codification of a binding dogma is a distortion of our orthoprax heritage. Why did he codify such a dogma? In the main, in my opinion, he codified such a dogma as a political and religious leader. He was a very important political and religious leader of Jewish communities throughout the Jewish world in the Middle Age, in the 12th century when he lived. And as a political and religious leader, not as a thinker, not as a legal scholar, in my opinion, as a political and religious leader, he formulated and codified a binding dogma for the unlearned Jewish masses to strengthen them, because Christians and Muslims had formulated binding dogma. Okay? But in my view, Maimonides as a thinker and legal scholar was very aware of the orthoprax nature of Judaism, and that his codification of a dogma and creation of an orthodox conception of Judaism was a distortion of the ancient Jewish tradition based on the Hebrew Bible and the Talmudic literature. As if we go back to the Talmudic literature, the foundation of the Jewish law is the commandments, mitzvot in Hebrew, the commandments that are found in the 5 books of Moses of the Bible. Okay? So the 5 books of Moses are a kind of legal constitution of the Jewish people containing the commandments, mitzvot, that are the basis of the Jewish law. And according to the ancient Talmudic tradition, the commandments of the 5 books of Moses are commandments of action and not belief. Literally, in Hebrew, it's mitzvot aseh velo ta'aseh, which literally means commandments of doing and not doing. Not commandments of belief. Commandments of doing, to do this and not to do that. But there are no commandments, according to our ancient Talmudic tradition, to believe or not to believe. And Maimonides' codification of a binding legal document, of a binding legal dogma, a set of beliefs that must be accepted, in order to codify such a dogma from a legal point of view. Jewish law is based on the commandments of the 5 books of Moses. These principles must be based upon the commandments of the 5 books of Moses, and according to tradition, those commandments, there is no such thing as commandments to believe and not to believe. This is a distortion, and Maimonides, in my view, was very aware of this. So that the commandments of the Jewish tradition, again, are commandments to do and not to do. There is no basis whatsoever to codify a dogma from a theological point of view, a set of beliefs that must be accepted. Okay? So Maimonides then, in my view, was very aware of this, and he codified the dogma only for the unlearned masses to strengthen them, because Christians and Muslims had formulated such dogmas. So I'll stop at this point with this video, and I'll continue in the second video by way of continuation. I'll deal with, in dealing with the nature of traditional Judaism as a religion, I'll elaborate regarding these 2 basic elements of Judaism as a religion. Judaism as a way of life of a people.